Larry Krueger here from the Pig in a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video as we talk about the dynasty that is the Kansas City Chiefs and the impact they've had on the entire league, including directly Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan. We'll talk a little bit about the Chiefs and their run coming up next. They'll hit the field next weekend as they try to go for 3 titles in a row, something that's never been done in the NFL. Check out Pig in a Pickle, 2 locations, Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. Get the brisket chili. Go say hi to Damon and Mary. Tell them that Krug sent you. We're also brought to you by Aura, and we'll have more on Aura a little bit later in the video. All right, let's talk about the Chiefs. The Chiefs are the NFL's dynasty. They're the NFL's current dynasty, and they have left a gigantic wake of destruction across the league. There's a great article on The Athletic by Jeff Howe that kind of outlines the impact of this dynasty that the Chiefs have become. And their reign at the top of the NFL has been very painful for their rivals. You think of the teams that have gotten close. Josh Allen and the Bills, and they're going to take another shot this year. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens had the home field advantage in the AFC playoffs last year, in the AFC championship game, only to lose. Jalen Hurts had had Mahomes down in the Super Bowl, only to see Mahomes come back. Brock Purdy walked off the field leading Mahomes, only to see Mahomes come back. And that's basically it. I mean, Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid have stepped up when the money's on the table. They've got a lot of the pillars of a great dynasty. Reid as the head coach, Steve Spagnuolo as the defensive coordinator, Dave Taub as the special teams coordinator, Patrick Mahomes, running their offense, Travis Kelce as his safety valve at all times at tight end, and then Chris Jones on that defense. And then now, the last year they had L'Jarius Sneed and McDuffie, Trent McDuffie. Now Sneed's moved on, but they still have McDuffie on the back end. They get Chris Jones up front. So, if you look at Kansas City, everybody is chasing Kansas City. And it's gotten to the point where, owners have gotten too impatient with their teams. 50 head coaches, not including interim head coaches, have been fired, and 24 general managers have either been fired or forced to give up power during this run of the Kansas City Chiefs. In the AFC West alone, Denver, the Chargers, and the Raiders have fired 7 head coaches, and 1 resigned, and they've dumped 6 executives just since 2018, all in this mad desire to keep up with the Chiefs, who again this weekend are the number 1 seed in the AFC, and they will open their attempt to become the first 3-peat Super Bowl champion in NFL history this weekend against the Houston Texans. And if you look at as far as what their impact has been on these other teams, I mean, Josh Allen is an awesome quarterback. He's going to win the Super Bowl at some point. Allen has been ushered out of the playoffs 3 times by Kansas City, including 3 of the past 4 seasons. Lamar Jackson entered this year with 2 MVP awards, but he only has 2 playoff wins as well. And he played Kansas City once in the postseason. It was last year in the AFC title game, and Kansas City won. They got super conservative. Kansas City did. They ran it. Isaiah Pacheco behind their incredible interior line. Charles Omenihu forced a fumble deep in Kansas City, or deep in Baltimore territory, and the Chiefs went to Baltimore, and despite the fact that the Ravens had the home field, they knocked the Ravens out of the playoffs and went to the Super Bowl. And then you think of Jalen Hurts, heartbreaking loss with Mahomes coming from behind. Brock Purdy, heartbreaking loss with Mahomes coming from behind. And that's the number 1 problem is there's only one Patrick Mahomes, and he's awesome. He's 15-3 in the playoffs. And if you think about it, he's been so good that the only other players that have Super Bowl rings are all old guys. Stafford, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers are the only 3 active full-time starting quarterbacks that have Super Bowl rings. Flacco has one as well, but basically all of the owners of Super Bowl rings are all old quarterbacks because Mahomes has been that dominant in this era. We thought Joe Burrow, had gotten through and broken through. He had beaten Mahomes in the playoffs. He's the only quarterback not named Tom Brady who's actually beaten Mahomes in the playoffs. But they haven't been able to break through. They got that one win. The Chiefs then got the revenge win, and the Bengals have fallen apart ever since. So it's definitely about rings for the quarterbacks. And Allen's great, and Lamar's great, and Burrow are great. But people talk about the top, the different tiers of quarterbacks. In reality, Mahomes is on the top tier, and then everybody else. Allen, Lamar, and Burrow, they can't be on the top tier. They don't have a ring. And this guy's got multiple rings. So unless those guys get a ring, they're never going to be considered an all-time great. And unless Mahomes and Reed somehow give up control of the dynasty that they have become, none of these other guys are going to get rings. Now, let's talk a little bit about the Niners, because Brock Purdy, there's this talk that Brock Purdy, who's likely to get a contract extension this offseason, is totally replaceable in Shanahan's offense. There are people that hate Shanahan that are still like, yeah, well, Brock's not that great. Look, he's in Shanahan's offense. And a lot of people say, Brock Purdy's totally replaceable in the 49er offense led by Kyle Shanahan. And, the question is, would the Niners be even having this conversation had the Niners defense gotten a single stop over the last 4 series in last year's Super Bowl? Purdy walked off the field in the fourth quarter with a lead. He walked off the field in overtime with a lead. But both times, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, ability and magic, whatever you want to call, came back to bite him. And so now we're still debating, is Purdy the guy? Can Purdy do it? But he walked off the field in overtime and in the fourth quarter with a lead. And he played well in that Super Bowl. And if the Niners defense stands up, he's a Super Bowl champion, and he's going to be rewarded with a record-setting contract this offseason. And then let's talk about Shanahan. Shanahan, I think is regarded by most NFL people as one of the great offensive minds of his generation. There's no question about that. If he had won Super Bowl 54, or if the Niners had won Super Bowl 54 or 58, Shanahan's entire career is looked at differently. He's a Hall of Fame lock. There's zero debate over his job status going into next year after one losing season. And he's at the top of his profession as one of the most coveted coaches in the NFL. Instead, there's this constant drumbeat about, Kyle can't win a big game. Kyle can't win a big game. Kyle can't win a close one. And there's tons that you can point to. You can point to 54. You can point to 58. You can point to 28-3 when he was the OC of the Falcons and the Patriots came from behind. And so, it's interesting. There was a quote from an anonymous, in this Jeff Howe piece in The Athletic, a former Patriots assistant coach was anonymously quoted as saying, within the coaches in the league, no one thinks any less of Kyle Shanahan. It's ludicrous to think that they should get rid of him. Reid had these same criticisms early in his career, and now he's clearly in the conversation for best coach ever. Kyle Shanahan's criticisms are that he lost a couple of Super Bowls. Okay, do you know how hard it is to get to the Super Bowl? So that was the quote from an anonymous Patriots assistant coach. And it is interesting. In a lot of ways, Kyle Shanahan is Andy Reid in Philly. Andy Reid got ushered out of Philly after 13 years. Kyle Shanahan's had 8 years with the 49ers. They've gotten close. They haven't gotten it done. And I'll say this, those years where Reid was in Philly and he had Donovan McNabb, was McNabb the best quarterback on Super Bowl Sunday, or was Tom Brady the best quarterback on Super Bowl Sunday? Is Brock Purdy or Jimmy Garoppolo the best quarterback on Super Bowl Sunday, or was Patrick Mahomes the best quarterback on Super Bowl Sunday? So to me, there's no shame in losing to Mahomes if you played the best you could play, and if you coach the best you could coach, and that's where the Niners are at. For Andy Reid, he left Philadelphia. He went to Kansas City, and now he's considered he's won 3 Super Bowls. He's considered one of the greatest coaches that ever coached. And, Shanahan gets, oh, you can't beat Reed. But the reality isn't, this is not about Shanahan. This is about Reed. This is not about Purdy. This is about Mahomes. Shanahan is 0-2 against Andy Reid in the playoffs. But Sean McDermott's 0-3. Jim Harbaugh is 0-1. Mike Tomlin's 0-1. I mean, that group of coaches are a combined 0-7 against the Chiefs in the playoffs. So is it really what Shanahan hasn't done and what Purdy hasn't done? Or is it really, should the focus be more on what Mahomes and Reed and the Chiefs have done? And then you think about these other teams that have gotten close. Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville, man, they were the next big thing. They struggled against Mahomes in the playoffs a couple years ago, and then people were like, oh, the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence, they're on the verge. Now Trevor Lawrence stinks. Doug Peterson's been fired. Shad Khan may fire the general manager, and Jacksonville's nowhere. You look at Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs at Arrowhead in 2021. And it looked like Burrow was going to be the guy who could somehow derail Mahomes and be the new best quarterback in football. And so what do? They try to get younger and faster on defense. Their defense coordinator, Lou Anarumo, was billed as the guy who could stop Andy Reid. Well, guess what? They just fired him. He's out. And Cincinnati didn't make the playoffs. And then you look at Buffalo. Buffalo is the only team to beat the Chiefs this year in a meaningful game. And they got a shot to get it done in the playoffs, and we'll see if they can get it done. And if they can, maybe the Bills, and Josh Allen will vault themselves into that top tier. And maybe Josh Allen will, make his Hall of Fame resume. But man, when you look at the teams the Chiefs have beat between Jacksonville and, what's happened to Cincinnati, what's happened to Buffalo. Look at the Colts. The Colts fell to the Chiefs in the 2018 playoffs. They've only played in one postseason game since. In 2019, in the 2019 playoffs, Chiefs beat Houston. What did Houston do in response? They fired 3 coaches in their next 3 seasons. They beat Tennessee in that 2019 playoff run. What did Tennessee do? Well, they went one and done the next couple playoffs. They blew up their front office, blew up their coaching staff, blew up their roster, and they're stumbling around. The Niners even. The 14 months after they lost Super Bowl 54 to the Chiefs, the Niners decided, you know what? Mahomes and Reed are too good. We can't get it done with Jimmy G. We have to trade 3 first-round draft choices and get up to get Trey Lance, because Trey Lance has the physical tools that could potentially replicate what Mahomes is doing. Bomb. Lance bombed. And only the discovery of Purdy has kept Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch employed. Look at Cleveland. They missed the playoffs in 2021, a season after they fell to the Chiefs. And what did they do? What was their response to losing to the Chiefs? Baker Mayfield's not good enough. We got to get rid of Baker Mayfield. And what did they do? They then traded for Deshaun Watson in the worst trade in the history of the NFL. The Eagles last year, or 2 years ago, lost the Super Bowl to the Chiefs. What happened the following year? They went one and done. They fired their offensive coordinator. They fired their defensive coordinator. And there was all kinds of talk about Nick Sirianni being, on the chopping block. And then if you look at the teams that the Chiefs beat last year, Miami didn't make the playoffs, were a shell of themselves. The Niners, they beaten by the Chiefs last year, didn't make the playoffs this year. So, so much of this is every time these teams, realize they get beat by the Chiefs, they either overreact like the Niners did. We have to have Trey Lance. They overreact like the Browns did. Baker's not good enough. We have to get somebody better. We'll trade everything for Deshaun Watson. Or they take a huge risk and wind up backsliding. If you look at the division, the Chiefs have won 9 consecutive AFC West division titles. They've won 7 division titles since Mahomes became the starter. They've gone 112-36 in the regular season over those 9 years. Their division rivals are all under 500. Chargers 73-75, Raiders 65-83, Broncos 62-86, They all have losing records over that same period of time. And if you look at since the Chiefs took over the division in 2016, the Chargers have had 4 head coaches and 2 GMs, and that doesn't count the interims. The Broncos have had 5 head coaches and 2 GMs. The Raiders have had 5 coaches and 5 GMs. And they're looking to replace now Antonio Pierce and Tom Telesco. So, teams, and then every time teams change their scheme, it takes a while to learn your scheme. It takes a while to perfect your scheme. So every time you're perfecting and changing your scheme, they're staying with another year of Reed, another year of Mahomes, another year of Spags, another year of Taub, and their continuity on their coaching staff, when compared to your, yearly upheaval, you're never going to beat them. You're never going to beat them. So here we are. It's 2025. Mahomes is 29. Andy Reid is 49 wins shy of breaking Don Shula's all-time coaching record. It's going to take Reid a few years to get there. Mahomes has got a few more years at the top, and they're going to win more. I don't know if they're going to win 3 in a row, but they got a great shot at it. And, really what it comes down to is, with Kansas City, it's like the rest of football is looking at Mahomes and looking at Andy Reid and saying, you know what, we need to run with them. How do we do it? And it's only going to be done through the draft. And you're not going to get it done by just taking your pick and going to the next round and taking your pick. You're going to have a game plan. And my game plan would be to trade back 2 times, 3 times, 4 times from where the Niners pick at 11, accumulate a boatload of picks, and see if you can hit at a very high rate in a short period of time. That is the Niners' best way to get back. They're going to hire whoever they're going to hire. Robert Saleh is the DC, or Lou Anarumo, or whoever they're going to hire. But at the end of the day, and they're going to sign Brock Purdy to a contract extension, and they're going to secure him. They're going to hire, Clay Kubiak as the OC, and they'll find a new special teams coordinator. But the Chiefs have the best offensive coordinator, the best defensive coordinator, and the best special teams coordinator, the best defensive lineman in the league, and the best defensive back in the league, and the best quarterback in the league. So it's not going to take, you're not going to be able to just, you know what, we're just going to do what's comfortable. This year, the Niners did what was comfortable. Let's just hire Nick Sorensen. He's here. The players like him. It's comfortable. It was comfortable. It wasn't good enough, but it was comfortable. Chris Schneider. Oh, he's a great guy. Love Schneids. Oh, he's the greatest. It was comfortable. And when the special teams proved to be a circus, you know what? It's just a little bit more comfortable to keep Brian Schneider. I keep calling him Chris. Brian Schneider on the staff, because it's more comfortable. Well, guess what? If you're going to knock off Patrick Mahomes at 29 and Andy Reid, who's 49 wins shy of the all-time mark, that means that he ain't going anywhere for the next 2 or 3 years. Mahomes ain't going anywhere for the next 2 or 3 years. So if the 49ers want to get a Super Bowl in the next 2 or 3 years, and I know they do, they are desperate to get that Super Bowl in the next 2 or 3 years, just doing what you normally do, doing what's comfortable, doing what seems logical, that ain't going to be good enough. I'll tell you that right now. You're going to have to go hire the right special teams coach, the right defensive coordinator, the right offensive coordinator. But it's a players' league. And ultimately, if you're going to knock Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs off their lofty perch, it's going to take a major injection of talent on the 49er roster. And that means they just can't pick their picks in each round. That means they have to trade back for more picks and hit on them. And if the Niners do that, they will climb to the top of this mountain and they will be on top. And if they don't, they're going to be like Jacksonville, like Cincinnati, like Buffalo, like Miami, like Cleveland, like Baltimore, like Philadelphia, and everybody else. It's the Chiefs' world, and everybody else is just living in it. So that's the message. Mahomes and Reed are on top. Shanahan's a great offensive coach. There's no question about it. He's one of the great coaches in the league. We're only doubting Shanahan because of the comparisons to Reed and Mahomes. We're only doubting Purdy because his defense wasn't good enough to finish out a victory over Mahomes and Reed. Otherwise, the kid's got a Super Bowl win in his ledger. So Shanahan, good enough. Purdy, good enough. But just doing the same old, drafting and hiring, making, comfortable decisions. You know what? Nick Sorensen, is he the best defensive coordinator in the league? Has he approached Spagnuolo? Nah. But you know what? It's a comfortable decision. The Niners are going to have to get out of their comfort zone across the board and trade back in the draft and then hit on those draft picks. And if they do all those things, they will be the team that ends the Chiefs' reign at the top of the NFL. If they don't, they won't. And it'll be up to somebody else, maybe Buffalo, maybe Baltimore, maybe Philly, maybe somebody else, to come along and knock Kansas City off their perch. The Niners, between Purdy and Shanahan, have the quarterback and the head coach to do this thing, but they don't right now have the roster. And the only way to get that is to trade back from 11 multiple times, accumulate multiple picks, and then hit on those picks. All right, we are brought to you by Pig in a Pickle. And, of course, this video is also brought to you by Aura. And here's a word now from Aura.
Have you ever typed your name on the internet and seen all of your private information is online? Are you tired of receiving tons of spam calls from random numbers? Are you receiving more and more of these as time has gone on? Well, that's where Aura, the sponsor of today's show, can really help you out. Data brokers sell your information to scammers and spammers and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, your email, your home address, all your records, your health records, who your relatives are. It's all out there. That's why I've been using Aura. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it also protects me from hackers who could use the information to help them access my social media accounts, my bank accounts, or any other sensitive information. Aura also does so much more to protect me and my family from online threats I can't see. I get other features like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more without having to download several different apps. It's really easy to set up. And best of all, I get everything at one affordable price. I value my privacy and I value yours. You can go to the link in the description to start your 2-week free trial.
Thanks to Aura for being a proud sponsor of The Krug Show. Thanks to Pig in a Pickle for being the title sponsor of The Krug Show. Thanks to all of you guys for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.